Hi everyone, welcome to the first tutorial by Studio RBA. What we're trying to achieve here is a series of tutorials and a bit of behind the scenes, if you like, of how we achieve primarily it probably will be sort of software based, CGI based, but as we go we do want to let people in on how we come up with our schemes as well. So what we're looking at today is you can just see this photograph, which is a professional photograph that we've commissioned. Paul McMullen was the photographer, and what the client has asked of us is, I mean, we basically got two options. We could Photoshop the image and clean the brickwork up and clean the stonework up, but I personally think that would be just be too awkward of a process. Probably take too long to replace or at least clean everything up in Photoshop. So what we're going to go for is just remodeling the front elevation, other than the restaurant at ground floor. Basically, yeah, just model it from scratch, and it gives us that ability then to texture everything up as if it was a new build. And the purpose of this image is so the sales agent has a slick pretty much cover image for the brochure. With a lot of developers, they'll sell apartments and what have you off plan. So the use of imagery as part of our commission is crucial. So if we just dive into SketchUp, the first thing we will do is delete this guy and then import our CAD drawing. You're gonna have to bear with me as well. This is the first tutorial. I'm sure I'll get a little bit slicker as we go. Right. So you can see there, this is the full facade drawn in CAD. Now this is actually being surveyed. We always recommend a proper measured survey, just for accuracy's sake. And you just want to check the scale there. Yeah, that's right. So first things first, just want to get the orientation right. Missing a few tools there. Just pop that over there. Right. So just rotate that 90 degrees. I just like to group it as well and work from the origin. You tend to find with 3D programs, just working closer to the origin, it's just less buggy. Okay. And one of the best things about SketchUp is the ability to use components. Obviously, when you model one thing and then just copy it across, it'll allow you to add the detail just to one element, and it'll kind of filter that detail through to the other components. So first things first, what I want to do is just try to spot the opportunities for components within this elevation. So you can see right away, got these pillars. Just make that a component. No, it didn't quite work. I think it make group first, component. Do you want to replace? Yes. And then what I tend to do is cut that and then take it out of the sort of main group, if you like. Just so then, just gives us that flexibility to then copy it across. What I'm doing here is using the move tool and then hitting control, just so we've got that ability to select the snapping point. Just notice there's a bit of scaling issue there. S on the keyboard for scale, by the way. So straight away you can see now that we've got the ability to add the detail into these pillars quite quickly. Again, just remove that. You can then see that actually you can grab that section of windows there and then copy them across. So if I just select that group component, just call it window set, cut, paste that back in place, and then if we just do components edit hide rest of model, it'll just allow us to add the detail back in or just fill the faces. There are plugins like Make Faces that you can use, but I tend to just use them for larger scale models such as master plans or site maps and things like that. If you're trying to just build a contextual model, but you know, for the detail of this, there's not too much legwork in just doing it all manually. Now, I must confess that we did have a crack at doing it in Photoshop, which I didn't mind the results, but the client wanted otherwise. So if you just see this example, so this is a kind of a draft, if you like, that we sent to the client, but the sales agent just wanted a little more polished than that. So if you just see the before and after, we were quite proud of that result, but as I say, they just want to go for a sharper look. So I suppose the point I'm trying to arrive at here is we did produce a very basic model for which we could then replace the windows. You can just see that all the windows were modelled there, so I have got access to a model I made earlier. For now, just to speed the process up, I'm just going to take the curtains off there. It's kind of just creating that little bit of lag. So I just copy that back through to here. The creation of this model was pretty simple, really. It was just a case of filling in these elements, making a group, making a component, and then obviously just protruding it out. And we just go into this component here. What we tend to do is, because it has more reliable results when you take it into another program for rendering purposes, everything's grouped by material. So you'll see the glass is a group, the frame is its own group, and then within here all the coloured glass is all its own group, just to give a bit of an insight into how we make our components and kind of subgroups within. So for this, what I will now do is just delete all the window line work just using the eraser. I'm saying that's probably a quicker way of, we do parallel projection, aligned view. Something I say to the younger guys I've worked with, if something seems to be taking too long, there will be a quicker way of doing it, such as that. So then, quick trick would be to then make that flat surface a component. Delete out all the other faces, for which would be the windows, and then actually copy that first component through. And if we cut and paste that in, what it's done for us is copied it through to all of the flat surfaces. If we then just align it with the front of the window, we can then just triple click and delete that surface there, and then straight away we've got a nice run of windows there. Same again if we refer back to the photograph. Let's just refer to the base one. You can see that these brick infill panels there, they're all repeated as well, so a great opportunity for components. So same again, group component, infill panel, could just be the name of it, and then same again, just delete the other instances. Just keep an eye on the scale, although it appears that they're identical, sometimes they're not, and when you get into rendering programs, little gaps in the geometry will create what's called light leaks, which you're asking for trouble basically when that starts to happen. And then finally on this section you can see there's a central brick pillar, so we can just group that off because it's within a component, so there's no need to make that a component itself, because when we copy the whole component over, the editing of that pillar will filter through. Now, just spotted there, it was going to be a bit tricky that copying the component through, so if we just snap that back so it's just flush with the front face. Sorry, they're just a tiny bit off there scale wise. We've just got access to be able to click right in the corner there. Just check that we're outside the main group, yeah. Just copy that over, just spotted a little bit of stray line work there. Now that we've grouped everything as well, I'll probably just triple click on this line work just to get rid of all the excess. Right, there we are, it's a bit cleaner. Always make sure that the geometry and any excess line work like that needs to be cleaned up, because again, when you're importing into other programs, it just causes headaches. Again, just tiny bit off with the scale there. Just making sure we're spot on by just shoving it away like so, and then just making sure it snaps back. For the avoidance of doubt. Okay, so you can see now that repetition is allowing us to quite quickly generate the faces first and foremost for the facade, and obviously adding the windows in was pretty straightforward. You can see from this shot that that bottom row there of windows is actually not in shot, so we can't afford to get rid of that bottom run there of windows. There's absolutely no point in modelling anything that you can't see in the view. While we're in this group, it'd be beneficial to just make that roof level its own group, because it's set back, and I know because we're the architects on this job that is 2.5 meters back. You can start to see how it's similar to that view now. Okay, so same again, we're just trying to spot the opportunity in the repetition of the facade. So got this parapet piece that if we again group component, just call it parapet element, cut, edit, just paste that into the basically outside the main group. What you'll find is when we're finished with this, it will be cut up, and when we're finished with it, we can just delete it out. I'll just jump into here and just remove any excess line work. Now what we can do with that, because that's at the head of these window bays, we can actually cut that, jump into that component and paste that in place there, so we know that that's filtering through as well. Now it looks as though the CAD drawing's just missing a tiny bit of detail on this parapet, but for the purpose of this tutorial we won't go too mad on the detail, just trying to discuss the principles of just how to model this facade quite quickly. And again, within the component there's another opportunity for repetition. We can then group that off, make that a component, and just call it parapet half, and then just copy that across, flip along the red axis. You can see the red axis along the bottom there just for reference. Snap that back there, and then we can start to just add just a little bit of thickness. Just add a little bit of thickness into that. Just this parapet piece. It's a little bit clear on the enhanced version. Actually, if we just make that a group, so the geometry is not conflicting with the panels here. And again, just for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not going to go too mad on the detail of this. We're just going to extrude it for now. Sometimes you can just use the scale tool as well when you give it a thickness, just to let that fly past. So again, you can see quite quickly starting to build this up. Again, we can copy that over there. You can just see there's one more pillar at the end. And we can actually just trace that section there and just group them off. Looks like we've got a bit of repetition the other end there as well, so we can make that into a component. Just call it end piece. Copy that down the opposite end, flip along red. Just pop that in there. Within here, the main group, we can start to add in a few faces. Also, I think I mentioned there at the start of the tutorial that we will keep the restaurant at the base. Considering we've partially edited this anyway, we don't want to waste this bottom section, so we won't be modeling this one. We'll keep that on the photograph so we can delete that out. Just a little mention here of when I joined those two lines back up, it didn't fill the face. It was because there's a line there kind of hanging into the space, so you need to delete that. Any stray lines that are kind of protruding into a face that you're trying to fill, SketchUp will prevent it from filling. So now that we've deleted that, it's allowing us to complete that face. Again, just delete any excess line work there. Sometimes it's better to just delete that and just go again. Now with the entrance area, probably will preserve the actual door, and it's got like a granite surrounding, but you can see the staining on here. So again, we're opting for like a CGI replacement, if you like. So we will model this, but again, you can see it's quite simple protrusions. So we're just filling the faces in manually. But we'll leave that out, and we can copy one of those windows we modelled earlier. We can copy one of them through. Now with these first floor windows, again, the actual window unit we can pinch from the windows above, and I'm just going to make them a group. I'm just going to use the first window that we filled in, copy that across, make sure Control is selected, and then just delete that out, and then just use the faces we've made there by copying it over as a way of carving the holes. And then if we just make that a group, cut, and again just come outside of that main group and just delete any excess line work. So I get a bit sloppy there with my selections. Okay. Copy that window down, paste it in there, and then what we can do is we can actually make that a group component, call it first floor windows, and then we can cut and paste in place those two windows there, and then we've actually made a very useful component for the first floor windows, allowing us to again very quickly just add a lot of content in quite quickly onto this facade. Now with this window it is slightly shorter, but you can see that the coloured glass panels at the head of the window, they appear to be roughly the same size, so it looks as if the bottom pieces of clear glaze and they're kind of shorter. So what we need to do in this instance is make this window unique, bring it down, and we just jump in, component edit, show the rest of the model. Now just be careful there, nearly just make unique again. Nearly edited every window in the model there. Okay, so we've set our point there, but I'm aware that the glass and the opening section obviously didn't follow through because they're their own group. We're alright to just scale that up there, and this piece of glass, just scale that up as well. Okay, there's our shorter window there, and very quickly we've managed to fill in that entire facade. And then if we just finish off with the upper level, just strike a line across there just to make sure that it's all captured. We can just delete that bottom run there and then just bring that down. Doesn't have to be too accurate where that finishes, because as I say, the bottom section of it is missed off the photograph anyway, so we don't have to worry too much with that. Now we can quite quickly just fill in some of the larger spans of brickwork and stonework. And again, you can see the opportunity for components here. So if we make that a group, make it a component, call it rooftop pillar, and then cut that, and then paste it outside of the main group as we've been doing, and then just copy that across. So again, just as a bit of an aid memoir, we can just delete the faces there because we know that we've copied them through, just so there's no overlap. And then again, we can just select these faces because we know we're going to borrow the windows from the lower levels now from here. So we can actually then make that a group, make component, rooftop, windows, cut, paste that in place, just reverse the faces. Make sure that when you're modelling in SketchUp that the white side of the face is pointing at what would be the camera. You get very unreliable results basically in rendering programs if the what would be the reverse face is facing you. So again, just check that, and then just copy them, over. What we can do is just hide that main group just to check that the geometries touching one another correctly, just using the scale tool to ensure that. Okay, then if we grab a window from a lower level, jump back into here, and then just use the front of the sill there as a way of snapping onto the line work. Again, move with control selected is just so important. It just allows you to select that first snapping point, and it's just so much quicker than what would be copy and paste and then having to snap to it. So solid sort of quick tip there. Okay, again, you can see we're not far off now really. Just want to edit, so you just want to unhide this main section. So we're pretty comfortable now that we've got all that in place. Again, just delete the excess there. And then what I want to do is just make sure that we could have extruded the face with the head of these pillars carved out, but I prefer to sort of model it as if we're thinking about how it's built. So those pillars will be sat on top of this brickwork. And again, it does help with light leaks when you get into your rendering programs. If the things sat on top of one another rather than sort of carved out of a face. So then this remaining section we can now use really, because it's the surrounding elements to the infill sort of panels we modelled there. So we can in fact grab all these smaller sections, cut, and just jump it back into the main group here. We can get away with doing that on this piece because it's a smaller scale. But now we're at a point where we can actually delete the main group of the lower section. If we just delete that and just check nothing goes missing. Oh, hang on. Right, cut. That was just in the main group, so if we just cut that, paste it outside of the main group. Okay, so if we just try that again, there we go. So nothing lost there. If we then just group this lower section off, reverse the faces, just copy that through. There's no need to embed this window in like a group or a component because there's only one instance of that panel there, so it's fine to just have that window just sat outside of any sort of components or subgroups. And again, I'm just grouping these off in sections, just allows you to edit quickly. I just noticed there that isn't meant to be there. So again, it is a good way of just checking that you're doing things correctly. If we just cut that, just place that in there. By the way, as well, if you, for speed's sake, you don't want to be, when you're navigating, you don't want to be jumping up here and selecting the orbit tool every time and selecting the pan tool. That just adds minutes and ultimately hours onto your workflow. So what a good piece of advice would be, if you click the mouse wheel in, it automatically selects orbit, and then with the mouse wheel selected, if you press shift and hold shift, it turns to pan. Just allows you then to, if you just hit L for line, when you select the mouse wheel or click the mouse wheel and go and orbit round the model, when you deselect the mouse wheel, it then obviously snaps back to the line tool. So it's just a much quicker way of doing things. And then, as mentioned earlier, good practice is to group by material. So you can see there you've got your stonework band there, and then stonework band at the top. So we just want to make sure that these are in their own group. And same again within the pillars. See, so that's actually all brickwork, so it's just that head piece that's stone. So again, if we make that a group there, just keeps everything organized, and then when you do get into a rendering program, it'll recognize the groups. It's much easier to texture. Okay, let's just save that off. 3D SketchUp folder. Just call it elevation model. And then just one last thing before we finish. It's just a little mention of using block colours to just help identify what's what in terms of grouping. So what's good practice is we've got our, again, sort of head of the pillar that is a stonework. What we want to do is just select a generic colour, just as close as possible. Maybe just edit that just to desaturate it a touch. If we then use the exact same colour for every other instance of stone, it helps again when you come into rendering it. There are different schools of thought on what export and import methods that are from SketchUp into programs such as 3ds Max or Revit or Maya and other programs like that, where obviously then out of those programs you could render, you know, using V-Ray or Maxwell and what have you. But it's just good practice for organising your SketchUp model by using these block colours, because when you're exporting into other programs, more often than not, these other programs will recognise those colours as well. So you can actually use the picker in a material library in another program, and you can actually select what would be that kind of beige colour, and you can convert that into, say, a V-Ray material quite quickly. So again, with something as repetitive as this, you would just use the picker, for example, in another program, select that, and then you can edit that material straight out of the material editor in another program. And it's a good way of just identifying where you're up to as well in SketchUp. Really, it is good practice. So again, if we just jump into here and just create as close as brick material. It only has to be a basic block colour. And what I'm doing here is just very crudely making my first extrusions. Just as a way of organising the model. Same again, you can see this kind of layering effect on the pillar. So if we just snap that to those, and then just extrude those back, just so there's a thickness to it all. This lower section's the stonework, so just using the material picker there, and just start to add the materials to the lower section. Again, I'm just eyeballing in the depth of the protrusions here, just as a way of quickly just getting 3 dimensions onto these faces. And then you know, further down the line we will obviously make that a bit more accurate. A good tip as well is, although grouping by texture is the general rule, it's also good to group by kind of section as well. So you can see this is a very clear section of the lower facade, so it just makes sense to kind of group that, just so you can then, it's a good way of just focusing the attention, I suppose, more than most, or more than anything else. So then we can just very quickly just select all that and make it the one material. Just notice that obviously it's made that into the beige. Just jump into there and just make that white again. Just checking the photo for what the colour should be for these surrounded sections. And again, because they're a different material, just select that and make it a group. Also, you can actually right click and select all with the same material. It's a good way of actually selecting something after the event, just in case you've not grouped anything properly first hand. You can actually go around with the paint bucket and just select everything by, or you know, paint the material on, and then right at the end you can just do select with same material, and you can actually create your groups retrospectively. I'll have to do that a few times. And again, just finishing the stonework off at the bottom. Notice these are brick pillars actually in the middle. So again, just give it a generic thickness for now. Triple click, make group, dive in and just give that a texture there. Just notice the looks like the head of these windows is just a tiny bit off. Just use the scale tool to just snap that in there. Yeah, sorry, by grouping that, it actually drew in itself the face behind this kind of subgroup, so we'll just leave that, and we'll just leave it loose in the group because nothing else is, so it won't be counteracting anything or intersecting with anything, I should say. Just give that a generic 300mm thickness for now. Let's just explode that. There we go. Now sometimes, again, you can get unreliable results with the push pull tool. If you just hit control, so it goes from the normal setting to the kind of the plus setting, just gives more reliable results. But just be careful. It reverses the front face, so if you just change it to monochrome mode, you can just check you can see those reversed faces there, and then just go back to texture mode, and then just give those a finish. And then now that we've created the 3D geometry, we can actually go back to this entrance area and then make that a group. Yeah, you can see the cut is there now. So okay. And that's largely it really for the sort of basic level modelling the facade. Obviously there are details to be inserted still. You can see there all the layering, and it's got a bit of a chamfered sort of face on it there. You can see the chamfers again in these parapet panels, but I think for now, you know, just covered the basic principles of how to very quickly model a facade around the core principle of using components to kind of speed the process up. So that's the first tutorial. Hopefully, you know, if you like this video, you got any comments, leave some comments in the section below, and hopefully, you know, subscribe to the channel, and we will continue to do these tutorials. And as I say, we will get a little bit slicker at the presenting of these tutorials, but for now, feedback is most welcome, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.